Welcome to In the Arena. I'm your host, Mindy McAlindon. Today we're bringing in Dino Fantegrossi. He is a dedicated student and an active member of the University of Arkansas community. He is known for his leadership and his passion in making a positive impact. Dino is involved with Turning Point USA, where he advocates for student engagement and thoughtful dialogue. He is a geology student with a poli-sci minor, and I think you'll enjoy hearing what he has to say. Welcome to In the Arena, Dino.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited.
I'm so glad you're here. So are you done with exams now? Or are you still?
I had my last one yesterday, so we're just done. And I literally just got feedback back from my professor in my final paper like 15 minutes before we started. And I did good on that paper, so we're in a good headspace right now for this.
I love that. I love that. Well, good. Congratulations on finishing your third year. Or your
my fourth year, actually.
Your fourth?
Yeah, I've got one more though.
One more. All right. 5-year plan. Gotcha. So let's talk a little bit about, you were from Arkansas, mostly,
yes,
right?
Ma'am.
Mostly from Arkansas. And you decided to go to the U of A, and you decided you wanted to study geology. Talk to me about that and what you want to do with it.
So I actually started as a physics major, and then, I got into the physics department, started taking some of those classes. I was surrounded by all the other physics students, and I went, man, they are really depressed. I don't want to be like that. I feel like if I go down this train, I'm going to wind up like that. So I did nope out of there, and I wound up having a friend who is in the geology or geoscience department. I switched majors to geoscience, and it's been a lot more fun. A lot of really cool professors in that department. So that's what we're doing now. That's the plan. As for what I plan to do with that degree, I've actually already got a job offer in politics completely aside from geology. So I'm not entirely sure. We'll see.
Very fun. So can you tell us what you're going to be doing in politics?
Well,
not disclosable yet.
Sometimes you don't want to tip your hand, right?
Okay. All right. No worries.
Yeah.
No worries. I won't push you then. So let's talk about how you also, when you came to campus, you got involved with Turning Point. Were you involved with politics when you were in high school as well, or just when you got to college?
I was, yes. We started a chapter of Young Republicans at my high school. I went to Little Rock Central High. So kind of a hotbed for interesting controversies that we could start. And trust me, we did. We got in big trouble because we called the school newspaper fake news. And they tried to make us retract it. And we said, we'll retract it if you let us start writing guest columns. And I wrote a couple, and I never let them come in and edit what I was trying to say. I was like, this is completely stylistic. You can publish it or not.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So you must have been swimming a little bit upstream, starting a young Republican or teenage Republican group at Little Rock Central. Was that difficult? How big was your group?
I don't think it ever got above like 5 people, but you know what? We got sort of sidestepped by COVID. And so we never really got super far with it, but it planted that seed in my head. And when I got to college, I went and tried to join up with the UARK College Republicans, and I got to say, it was a little slow, but I wound up sort of falling in with Turning Point, and I never looked back because they've got a lot of really interesting stuff going on with Turning Point that I don't really see any other group in the game really offering. So,
well, I love Turning Point. So I sit on the RNC. And Tyler Boyer, who's the COO of Turning Point, was on the RNC with me, served together, really got to see what Turning Point did and kind of see behind the scenes, worked a lot with, I don't know if you know Charlotte Perez, but she is she does everything, I swear, with Turning Point. And it's amazing what they do. So tell me, when did you get involved? Freshman year or kind of right away?
I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, to be completely honest. When I did, it just kind of happened at some point, and I was like, oh, I'm here now. And then the sort of past couple of people that were in charge, they became super inactive. They're getting ready to graduate, and the group sort of fell off a little bit. So I wound up last spring taking over as the president of the chapter at UARK, and it's been an uphill battle to grow it into what it is today, but we had an event last semester where we didn't even have any speakers or anything. We just hosted a debate watch party. We had over 120 people show up to that last semester. So that was our big accomplishment last semester. Yeah. Then in the spring, We had a event where we had 9 different speakers come from across the state of Arkansas to talk about issues facing our state and ways that we can provide a better future for our children. It's very important to me. So had that event, a whole lot of fun.
I love that. And so are you, what did you find most, you said it was different than what you'd seen anything else.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that about Turning Point that made you say, this is the group for me? Do you feel like, well, answer that first and then I'll go from there.
Sure. So I feel like a lot of these college groups are really not much more than like a resume building organization, something that you go and you show up, you participate in for a little bit and you say, yeah, I did that, check, and I put that on my resume. And that makes me look really good when I go for whatever job I want to be in next. If I'm a college Republican, that's great for like if I want to work as an internship in some state office or whatever. That's not really what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in just sort of, checking the box for whatever I do next. I want to actually affect change where I'm at. Turning Point enables me to do that more than anywhere else I've ever been. So that's why I've been super invested in it. That's why I believe in the mission. And they give us, a little bit of liberty to do what we want. So it's not like we have to just adhere to whatever the message is of the week for the national organization. If we want to sit down and we want to talk about issues here in the state of Arkansas, we can do that.
Awesome.
That's what we've been doing.
And do you have a lot of meetings? Do you have a lot of people attend your meetings? Do you feel like I assume if it's like other Turning Point groups that I've been to, a lot of energy at these meetings?
Definitely a lot of energy. It certainly fluctuates week by week, depending, we're college students, got a big class lists and whatnot, but it's sort of it floats around. We try to get around 20 people we do chapter meetings every other week. And then we do all sorts of stuff on the side. We're going to go kayaking this summer. We've done bonfires. We've done movie nights, UFC fight nights, like all sorts of fun stuff just to build a culture and a community, not just like this is sort of like a little bit of like a side job so that it's a resume thing. No, this is a community where we're working together towards a common goal. And we actually like being around one another.
So, and that's a great point. I think that's what makes it different than other organizations that you see on campus. It's not, this is my monthly meeting that I go to, and this is the amount of hours that I put against it for volunteering. It really is, I hate to say a way of life, but it is a little bit more of a way of life. You're doing life together. You have similar beliefs, and you want to change and make life better for everybody. And I think that's a really noble goal. And it's hard as a college student. I applaud you for finding the time, not just to participate, but now to be president of that organization. That is a lot of time and commitment. And you already have a heavy workload with college and all the demands that come with college. So good for you for finding time to do that. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to be a Republican on campus.
Sure. So I guess I will say any sort of issues I talk about are going to be from my own perspective, not necessarily from Turning Point, since I work very closely with them. I just want to specify that.
Good.
In
good
terms
disclaimer.
of being a conservative on campus, I would say, especially me, I think it's fair for me to say that I'm the most outspoken conservative student on the University of Arkansas campus. I don't know of anybody else who really takes the cake above me, and I don't know of anybody else who has had their name and photo floating around various group chats within the University of Arkansas system, sort of talking smack about me and how they can take me down. So, but you don't get anywhere without a couple haters, right? You're not doing anything worth doing if you don't have haters. So
if you're taking fire, you're over the target, right? So
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But in terms of what it's like, I mean, sometimes you get a little pushback from a professor here and there, but ultimately, we are in Arkansas, right? So it's not unheard of for there to be a conservative student on a college campus here in the state of Arkansas. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE, they do I don't know if it's annual, but they do regular studies of various college campuses, and they look at various statistics within them. I think the University of Arkansas student body is about 50-50 in terms of conservative to liberal. When it comes to faculty, it's about 10-1.
Wow.
In terms of liberal to conservative.
Yeah.
So that's where they really get you, is going to be with the faculty. And we've had significant pushback, more so from the university than we have had from any of the students, really. We've had some interactions, nothing crazy California style, but, we get called names every once in a while. I've been slapped before, but, it's nothing.
Goodness.
Well,
not by a professor, though.
No, not by a professor. Although a couple of weeks ago, I did have a faculty member literally scream at me in like one of the major student centers. So that was a lot. That was fun, honestly. Very interesting.
So when you go to your poli-sci classes, are you seeing it as liberal in those classes, or are you seeing that a little more balanced?
So I'm sort of working on that minor now more than I have in the past. I'm not super far into it, but from the poli-sci classes that I have taken, the professors I've had have been fairly neutral. I think that's probably the case with a lot of the more entry-level classes. When you got to the higher-level classes, I'm sure that changes. I could tell you in a year how that looks probably once I go to graduate, because my whole last spring semester is all poli-sci pretty much.
Okay.
So. But, yeah.
That's pretty exciting. So it's a big change to go from geology to poli-sci. Are you thinking that you want to still pursue something in geology? Or are you thinking, no, I really have found kind of my passion and my love, and this is the direction I want to go?
So I feel like my entire my whole life really, I've sort of been pushed into various leadership roles. I was an Eagle Scout.
I love that.
And so that I've got a lot of like leadership training and whatnot in sort of that sense. And it was never really even my intention particularly to become the chapter president of Turning Point. It was something that was suggested to me by our former field representative. And I went and thought about it for a little while and said, yeah, sure, I'd do that. And I feel like my whole life has been various things, people, circumstance coming to me and saying, hey, you're really good at doing this. And at some point you just got to say, maybe that's God talking. And when God talks, you don't say, if God tells you, jump, you don't say, but I prefer swimming. You kind of, at that point, you just shut up. Or if you're going to say anything at all, you say how high, and so I've decided it's better that I just embrace the thing that everybody keeps telling me I'm good at, that I obviously have some sort of calling for, than try and fight against it the rest of my life.
That's great. Well, I think the last guy that said no was that Jonah, like a whale came and swallowed him up, as I recall, or a fish.
Yeah, I'm not super interested in getting swallowed by a fish personally. So
yeah, nobody wants that to happen. So, you're pretty young to have such a clear vision of what you want to do. Do you find that your generation is much more aware of what they want to do and who they are and who they want to be? Or do you find that you're kind of unique in that?
I feel like I'm fairly unique in that. And what I'll say is that when it comes to my generation, I think that a lot of older generations don't really understand quite where we are at. I mean, we are being told that it is political suicide to mention anything about Social Security, and yet all of us understand that Social Security is going to be insolvent fairly soon. Yeah. We're never going to see a dime of it, and yet we're expected to pay into it if we pay into it at all. So, we've definitely, and I'm not saying you in particular, I don't know how old you are, but a lot of the older generations, it feels like many of them, not all, but many of them simply did not have the sort of forethought for their children on what they were going to pass down to them. That's why you see people like Senator Dianne Feinstein in office at age 92 or whatever being told, just sign here, Yeah. You got people that have been in office for 50 years. That was never the intention.
No.
We were founded on this idea of civil service, and that's gone in this country. But it's especially gone. What is especially gone is the sort of attention that is brought to what do we pass down to future generations. And so that's really a goal for me. I've internalized a lot of this and said a goal for me, something I want to do, is provide a clear idea of what we are going to pass down to the next people. Because if we don't pass down anything to the next people, then we're done. There's a famous quote I really like. I don't know exactly where it's from. Some people say it's Greek, Latin, whatever. I don't really care. They say a society grows great when men plant trees under which their shade they shall never sit. Some
Yeah.
people did not take that to heart. I take that to heart.
Yeah.
That's my goal. Plant those trees.
I think that's a great idea. And I think that is that looking forward to the future. What are these the decisions we're making now? Not how do they impact me, but how are they impacting my kids? And then at some point, my kids' kids, right? Like, let's keep that in mind. And I agree with you. I think we have, Arkansas is unique in that we have term limits for every position. I mean, within our county parties, we have term limits within every position, almost, not every, but almost every position in Arkansas, we have term limits. And while those have kind of fluctuated over the years, I think it's a good thing. And sometimes you lose really good people that you'd like to keep. Sometimes you lose some institutional knowledge because someone's hit a term limit. But on the whole, I think it's really good. And I've always heard the argument, I love your feedback on this. I've always heard the argument that we don't need term limits because elections are term limits, which I disagree with. But I'd love to hear what you think about it.
Elections are term limits if your population is particularly educated, but when you have a massive population, so let's just be perfectly clear. I do not really see much of a middle class in the United States anymore. It's very much split down the middle between you either have enough to live or you don't. And if you have enough to live, you're basically in the upper class at that point. I'm not sitting here and I'm going to start making like a class war sort of argument or anything like that. But we have to be clairvoyant about the point that, it's very real that a lot of what we think of as the American dream, being able to have a house that's sort of a couple cars, having a bunch of kids that are able to go play in the yard and whatnot, that's out of reach for most people my age. And that can change, but it doesn't come easily. And so, when it comes to the idea of term limits, it's very hard for somebody to sit down and really care about, well, what is this guy going to give me? State politics. That's why all of the focus is put on the presidential election. Even midterms, people don't show up nearly as much. People don't really have the luxury of being able to care about these things nearly as much as they used to when they've got to work to the bone to provide for their families.
Yeah.
So that education only goes so far. You have to educate yourself. And if you can't because you've been working, that's tough,
Yeah, and that is very hard. And I find that even with my own constituents, it's very hard when we have a bunch of ballot initiatives. And I go door knocking, and they'll say, well, while you're here, tell me about the ballot initiatives. Because it's hard to find good information. It's not that there's not enough information, but sometimes it's hard to know what's good and what's true because there is so much information available now. So I agree with you. I disagree a little bit on the middle class. I think there is still a pretty strong, vibrant middle class, but I think I think your point that it's out of reach for people your age is very, very fair. I think
that's more so what I meant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a much older group. So you're buying houses much later in life, right? You're having kids later in life. And I think that's a really fair statement to make. And I do think, like, we had an issue in the Republican Party where we have high filing fees, right, in Arkansas. And a few years ago, the filing fee was raised to $30,000 to run for Congress.
Yes, I'm familiar with that, actually.
Okay. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts? Well, see, that gets a little tricky. I understand the need to raise funds, but I think that, when it comes to a state like Arkansas, where traditionally it's been one of the poorest states in the country, that certainly raises the barrier of entry significantly for your average person who might want to take a shot at it. And your average person, right, they might be great at it. But if they can't put up $30,000, that's certainly a challenge. Yeah. I don't really know how other states do it, to be completely honest, but I know that Missouri, just across our border, is not nearly as high. I think it's like 2,000 or something like that. So, that's a huge barrier to entry, and I think that that's just not super fair. Yeah, I understand the need to raise funds, but there are other ways to do it.
Yeah, kind of an interesting. We're very unique in the way that we do that in Arkansas because those funds actually go to the state party, whereas in other states sometimes they'll go back to the state government. So it's kind of interesting, or the county government, depending what they're filing for. Kind of interesting. Okay, so if you were to talk to, like, I have a young son. I have 4 kids, but I have one that's really young. So if you were going to talk to him and say, here's some advice on how, if you want to get involved with politics, or if you want to get involved on campus, or if you just want to make a difference in your community, what kind of advice would you give him?
I think the first thing that I would say is that if you want to affect change in your community, you've got to have a community that backs you. So, when I took over as the president of Turning Point, it was kind of just me. And I spent a lot of time finding people that could help me. It's not a one-man game. It never is. You need people that are going to be on your team to affect that change. So if the most important advice I could ever give is don't feel like you have to do it yourself. There's nothing wrong in asking for help. And in fact, having that team of people to back you makes the whole experience so much more rewarding.
That's great. And I agree with you. It is not a one-man show, but I think sometimes we feel like we have to do it all. So again, good job in making sure that you are spreading that out. So let's look forward a little bit. You have one more year of school. Will you continue to be involved in Turning Point as you move forward?
Absolutely. My goal for this whole next year is just going to be building something that outlasts me. I think that has sort of been a theme of this conversation so far. Yeah. That was something that I felt like the people that came before me didn't really put a lot of forethought into, is who's going to do what next. And that didn't work out so well, to be completely honest. So taking some time to say, who am I giving this over to? What am I giving them, right? What resources are they going to have because I took the time to find them and build them up? That's very important to me. So we want to pass down something greater than what I was giving. That's the goal.
That's great. And if people wanted to get involved with Turning Point, what if I know on campus you have communications and you invite people and those things, but what about old people like me who want to get involved with Turning Point? How can we help? How can we support you? How can we get involved with Turning Point?
I think the greatest way to get involved is simply just go to something like our Instagram and give us a follow. And, if you happen to live in, it's Turning Point USA, turningpointusa.uark on Instagram. Okay. So go follow that. If you happen to see that we have a big event coming up, one that's open to the public, show up. Share it with your friends. Have them come as well. Most of our big speaking events, stuff like that, completely open to the public. Anybody is more than welcome to come. If you've got the money, we don't turn away donations. I would ask that you donate to our national organization, not specifically to us. If you want to donate specifically to Turning Point Ozark, I can send you that information. I don't have it just like off the top of my head right now, but that is something that we technically can do. That being said, give what you can give. It's not like you have to come and donate to us or anything like that. If you don't get the money for that, totally fine. We're making do without it as is.
And you know what? I think we've kind of neglected. I'm sorry I jumped in this conversation on Turning Point. Let's just talk about what Turning Point is real quick, and then we'll kind of wrap up the conversation. But they were very impactful. They've been impactful in the last few elections, but this last election specifically, Turning Point made a major difference. You want to talk about that just a little bit? Give us an overview on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, nobody was laughing anymore after 2024. They didn't take us super seriously. And then what did we do? Well, I'll tell you what we did at the University of Arkansas. The month of September was our voter registration month. We registered over 160 students to vote. I went and personally turned in every single one of those voter registration forms to the county courthouse right off of Dixon myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Then in the month of October, what we did is we set up a table on campus. We printed out all sorts of different facts for the week, different days that we tabled. We would talk about different policies. So we talked about energy policy. We compared things like nuclear and solar and natural gas and coal, et cetera, just talking about stuff like that. We talked about immigration. That was a pretty heated day. We had a lot of debates. I had a big poster board with a bunch of immigration facts. And I'll tell you, that got some eyeballs. But the whole point is just providing viewpoints to people who might be on the fence. I don't really know what I believe. I'm swinging this way or the other. We'll sit down, come have a conversation with us. We'll tell you the facts and you can make up your mind for yourself. So as a national organization, Turning Point doesn't support any party or candidate. Correct. We talk about issues. From there, you make your mind on what you want to do with that information. But I've got a lot of issue knowledge up here, and I'm more than happy to talk about it with you.
And that is what I think what is really the key for Turning Point is they're not partisan. It is truly, we're just going to tell you the way that it is. And there are a lot of people, to your point earlier, Dino, is that a lot of people don't have time to go and find that information, and you are providing a great service. And just to give Turning Point National a shout out, they really went in, they chased ballots in states where it was legal. They followed up on mail-in ballots to make sure people were getting those ballots back in. They were able to target underserved communities and make sure that people were getting knowledge and information and access to vote. So it was amazing. And I don't know about you, but I personally think it had a significant impact on the outcome of the race.
I think it most certainly did. I think it's hard to deny.
Excellent. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to go backwards. So
no worries.
Let's wrap this up real quick. I just do appreciate your time. I know you were so slammed, and I felt so honored to be able to squeeze in with you. One thing that you hope to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years, and you'll be like, I've done it.
Ooh, that's a great question. I'd say that something I really want to accomplish within the next 10 years is I would like to have kids of my own. I know that that's completely unrelated to politics and all this, that, and the other, but what is the point of building up something for the next generation if there is no next generation? So say this time, 2035, if I don't have any kids, I've done something wrong.
So I think that may be the best answer to the question I've ever gotten. I have 4 kids, as I said, and honestly, I have no better job than being called mom. It is my most favorite job. So what an honorable thing to say. Okay, last question. This is a fun one. Tell me 3 fun facts about you real fast, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. So I like to collect flags. You see one right here. We all know this one. This is the civil peacetime flag. I've got a Don't Tread on Me flag right over here.
Love it.
And then upstairs in my bedroom, I've got a whole lot more. I've got a Come and Take It flag. I've got a U.S. Army flag. I like collecting patriotic flags. I think they're fun. Second fun fact, I was the Central Arkansas Astronomical Society Student Astronomer of the Year.
That's fantastic.
Try saying that 5 times fast. I don't think you can. I'd say that third fun fact, kind of going in the theme of astronomy, is I've spent like a large portion of my, I guess, late adolescence through today just learning various things in the night sky. I love astronomy. It's so much fun. I carry a telescope in the trunk of my car.
That is fantastic.
There's a couple fun facts about me.
I love that. Dino, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. It's been so great to learn a little bit about you, and you are certainly a young man who is going places. So good luck to you. Good luck in your last year, and I look forward to connecting again soon.
Absolutely. Pleasure talking with you.
Take care. Well, I hope you've enjoyed getting to know Dino Fantegrossi. He is just an amazing young man who is mature beyond his years. He clearly knows where he is going. He has done a great job of leading Turning Point on the University of Arkansas campus. As he mentioned, getting students registered, educating people, just putting the facts out there so that people can start to make really good decisions as these young people are beginning to vote, and they are the future of our country. So again, I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Dino. We wish him all the luck as he moves forward into his career, and hope you will join us again next week in the arena.